Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our contract renewal C4ward, as well as the tenure promotion C4ward, meeting on essentially professional development opportunities through extramural funding and grants in particular. With me today is my co-host and co-presenter, right, literally sitting next to me, but with a cooler background, Brandon Marquiga. So Brandon, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
So today, what we're going to be doing is having a brief presentation on an overview about grants and some opportunities. We're going to be looking at the various types of grants and how you can, in fact, get involved and some of the resources that might be available for you folks. So Brandon's going to be doing a quick presentation. I will also be sharing my experiences about applying for various grants, both at the local as well as federal level. And of course, I do also want to remind you folks that we do have additional workshops that are available. Plus, of course, I just sent out to all of our participants an additional opportunity for professional development that is in fact funded by a grant. So go ahead, Brandon, take it away.
Everyone, thanks for joining our session today. I'm here with the KCC-GO team. Stan, Linda, and Martin are here with us. Feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to address them. So I have a really brief presentation to share with all of you to just give us an overview of different types of extramural activities and how people can get involved. Give me one quick second to make sure I can share. Thanks again for joining us on a Friday. Today I wanted to talk about three basic topics. Our office provides guidance and support for you to pursue extramural funding. We have worked with a number of your colleagues who have successfully applied for various grants, contracts, and awards, even as recent as this semester. So although there have been recent changes in federal government, we're still quite active with everybody and appreciate all of your outreach to us. We also assist with identifying funding opportunities. So if there's an event, if there's an idea or something that you really want to put into practice, just let us know and we'll keep an eye out for funding opportunities to support them. We also facilitate professional development sessions like these. So thank you again for inviting us to your C4ward. I think this is a conversation that has been long overdue. So first, I wanted to cover why some reasons are to get involved with extramural activities. First, it enhances your professional profile and career advancement. We're here to talk about contract renewal as well as promotion and tenure. So extramural activities have been able to support people in their respective applications in the past. Definitely ask faculty colleagues who have been successful in that space for pointers. It also helps to support research, teaching, and service commitments, which are inherent in the promotion criteria, as well as creating opportunities for collaboration and networking for colleagues across the campuses, as well as out of state. It also provides funding for innovative projects and institutional initiatives. We are fortunate to be able to secure a number of grants. Usually it's about $5 million a year, so we can support different types of campus activities. We realize that there isn't always funding available at the campus to support everything, so we want to do what we can to get discretionary funding to support you. Now, you're probably wondering, who has among your colleagues applied for funding in the past? I wanted to share some examples to just kind of get everybody thinking about the different types of activities that could be funded. We've recently had the pleasure of working with both Saba and Amy on applying for scholarships from the federal government agencies. First, Saba applied for it's actually a 5-year scholarship grant to support nursing majors from the Health Resources and Services Administration. Over 5 years, it's worth $3.25 million. Amy also applied for a 6-year NSF grant This is again for scholarships for STEM majors. This supports the students both at Kapi Olani as well as post-transfer if they're at UH Manoa and other four-year campuses within the system. And this is valued at $2 million. We also recently worked with Francisco Acoba in applying for funding opportunity through a state agency. If you're familiar with it's the Hawaii Department of Agriculture's Kaulunani's Celebrating Year of Our Forests initiative. He applied for an award that was $13.5 thousand. And we are really happy to say that we've been working with Wendy Kuntz, who applied for a small grants for research fund to look at the Manuoku. This is funded by the National Science Foundation, and it's been under negotiations for quite some time. The reason why I wanted to bring this example up is we've heard a lot about changes at NSF in funding, and Wendy actually recently in the last 2 weeks got an email about the update in her award. So this is well into 2025, and we're still able to move forward with NSF funding. Couple of other examples, it's not just federal grants. We're looking at contracts and awards. Ryan and Alejandro were successful in getting offers for 2 international grants. Ryan applied for an Hubert Humphrey Community College Residence Program Award. This is to host an international visiting scholar, and she was scheduled to be here this semester. Before there were changes at the State Department. And Alejandro applied for a 3-institution partnership with 2 Indigenous serving institutions in Canada, Mexico. That was a really awesome and exciting project worth $9.5 thousand. Finally, I wanted to share a couple more examples of partnerships with state agencies because those are also close partners to us and groups that we can work with actively. Stacy is working on a new partnership promoting mental health resources for first responders with the Hawaii State Department of Health. It's going to be a multi-year project, and the first year of funding is $160,000. This is for our EMS and EMT students. And Martin Chung continues to be very successful at the non-credit partnerships with the Department of Education. He's worked with Castle, McKinley, Waipahu, Kaiser, and a number of other schools to offer various health education non-credit programs. Think in farm tech and community health worker programs. So another really good partnership. And finally, Sean Ford he's closing a 6-year partnership with the Department of Education. This is to certify teachers of English as a second language. And he's in the process of negotiating another 3-year agreement. So before I go on, I'm going to pause real quickly and just make sure that we don't have any comments or questions in the chat. Good, no questions in the room? Okay. All right, well, the first step to applying for extramural funding, people usually come to us if there's a funding opportunity that they're interested in pursuing, but that's not always necessary. You can come to us to start even today, this afternoon, if you'd like. We always encourage people to reach out when they have free time to just think about things and ruminate on what they're interested in pursuing. So first step is usually preparing a professional profile. And this is definitely something that you're comfortable doing. We advise people to develop a resume, a CV, or a bio sketch if it's required from the federal agency, along with a 1-page bio. This will highlight your expertise in your chosen area and align the credentials that you're writing about with the specific program or sponsor priorities. So if you just want someplace to start, it's better to have something that is general and easy to send to various sponsors. But I think you'll have a general sense of like what information would be useful in your given area of expertise. The second is to create or update your social media accounts. This is something that's often overlooked, but it's also very powerful. We noticed that many of the programs that we apply for have a dissemination plan. So one of the things that people really ask for is how you're going to boost visibility for not only your project, but the shared goals that you are pursuing with the sponsor, as well as your Kapi and you as the principal investigator. So to list a couple, we're all familiar with LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, which I believe our campus has presences on. You'll also want to consider whether ResearchGate, Social Science Research Network, OrcID, and others are platforms that you want to tap into. And yes, people are still using X. I don't see as many mentions of dissemination plans involving Blue Sky and other platforms. TikTok is kind of popular among international ed programs, but I'm not so sure that I've seen any official channels that we've worked with. Okay, so this part is, I'm going to tell you the truth, it's a lot of work to do this part, but it's something that you can do ahead of time. It's almost like filing your taxes. You know, it comes around like that time of year. So it's always good to set yourself up before those deadlines come up. I would say, like, if you can spare a couple of moments, I know you're incredibly busy, but if you can spare a couple of moments to set up profiles in these various application systems, it's prudent to do so. So the first is grants.gov. That's the system that most federal funding opportunities are available on. Now, we know that funding availability for federal government agencies is not at the same levels as last year. So you may not have to prioritize grants.gov and research.gov as much as before. But if you do want to sign up for it, I do want to alert you that there is a dual authentication requirement. It's not just grants.gov or research.gov. You'll also need to sign up for login.gov. If you've ever applied for global entry or TSA PreCheck, same system, just you'd use your UH login credentials instead of your own personal account. Then there's a third layer of authentication. This is internal. This is a process I'll cover in just a quick second at UH and also Kapi that you'll have to go through. Okay, so the onboarding process is still ongoing. In addition to signing up for those systems, we've worked with some people here. We just had Preetha join us today, and she's worked really hard with us on getting set up in these systems. You will hear from Human Resources soon about the Internet Security Awareness Training certification, as well as the annual conflict of interest disclosures. The ISAT is common across different platforms. So if you use Banner, you probably already have your ISAT. And you will use that same ISAT certification for the electronic proposal submission system called MyGrant, which is administered by the UH Office of Research Services. This RCOI certification that I have listed second here is different than the conflict of interest disclosures that we just got from Human Resources in the past week. I actually just submitted my COI and noticed that some of the questions are similar, but they're not exactly the same thing. So our COI is managed by the grant units. This is with Research Compliance and Office of Research Services. You'll submit your RCOI to your supervisor. For faculty, it's usually department chairs and your dean, 2 levels of approval. So we at the grants office, we want to make sure that your department chair and your dean is aware of these RCOI certification submissions and that we help them with the routing. The final thing is the extramural disclosure training in La Lima. This is a one-time certification. It's going to ask you a bunch of questions about research safety and other conflict of interest type compliance questions. So this is a lot. I just want everybody to be aware that if you apply for extramural funding in your official capacity at Kapi, just be aware that there are these systems above and beyond just the application itself. So a couple of tips. We look at personnel and budgeting. So even before you're applying for something, I'd say that it's good to start thinking about like what your pay rate is and you know what you're getting paid. I mean, today's a payday, so this is actually a really good time to think about this. You can jump onto like, I think either PeopleSoft or it's not Star. I use the general clearinghouse for UH to access pay stubs. But anyway, there is a tab where you look for like W-2s and whatnot to look for your pre-tax pay rate. It's good to know that amount just in case someone is budgeting for your time. For faculty, you'll definitely want to know your per credit hour if you're on a 9-month appointment, and whether you're eligible for overload. There are two things to think about when it comes to overload. You definitely want to talk to human resources about this to get an official view, but from working with faculty on this, we know it's the timing and it's also the amount. So I know there's an amount limit that you have to be cognizant of, and that's in your UPA contract. The second thing about the timing, this is off-duty period, usually summer months, and you wouldn't be getting compensated for extramural activities at the same time as you're doing something for like the campus. So for example, like common thing that comes up is if you're teaching something during summer session 1, but you're also doing something on a grant that overlaps, you'll definitely want to work out those dates to just make sure that you're getting compensated for the work that you're doing, but not getting disqualified because of the timing aspect of the contract. Okay, that's a lot about personnel because we just want to make sure people are getting incentivized and paid for the good work you're doing. So as I mentioned, make sure you know how to budget for your per credit hour. For CC faculty, I think it's your annual pay rate divided by 27 credits per year. And we usually use a rounding formula in Excel to just adjust for like the cents. We usually try to get it to like the nearest $100 to make it an easy calculation. And just be mindful that in addition to your pay that you see in your paycheck, there are the fringe benefits like your healthcare, your tuition waiver, other things that's included in your employment package. And there's a different rate for release time versus overload. Cool. I'm going to pause real quick and just see if we have any questions or comments in the chat.
Yes, we actually do.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the questions is, what if you have no expertise?
Great. No, that's perfect. Actually, having no expertise, you're in a good spot to get involved and build your professional profile, as I had mentioned earlier. I'd encourage people with no prior expertise to consider whether it makes sense to partner with someone who's a seasoned principal investigator or somebody who's already participated in a grant program. Our campus has a number of grants that we're implementing right now that are multi-year. So if you've heard about Title III funded initiatives, especially partnerships with Honolulu CC and Chaminade, you'll be hearing about the Manao Institute from Kelli shortly. So that's a really good opportunity to consider tapping into to start building the momentum and your presence. But if you have any specific follow-up questions about how a new person with no prior experience can prepare or get involved in extramural activities, do let me know. I see this as two different things. Like it's preparing to be an applicant and a principal investigator of your own project, as well as like getting involved with extramural activities that's already ongoing. And what I will say about that is we do have a number of opportunities to like apply for subawards. Like you'll hear about Perkins, Gear Up. There's some on like food security. Those are all really excellent opportunities to apply for funds for a project that you will direct as the lead person without that full weight of having to go to the federal government and sign over your life when you do their terms and conditions. So great question. Are there any other questions that came in? Okay. All right, so we also focus on professional development opportunities. We have an ongoing grantsmanship series that's hosted just about every other Thursday. We've got a session coming up, I think, on Thursday, April 10th. So next week. And we usually do cater, so please come. We really like just casual conversation. We'll usually pick a theme. Next week's theme is going to be focusing on non-federal funding opportunities part 2, which is private and foundation sources. We're going to be joined by our development director, Asia Grande. And you'll also hear from some folks who are managing private and foundation grant opportunities. We're also able to send you to grantsmanship workshops and conferences if you're interested. It's also important to stay engaged with academic conferences, workshops, and symposia within your discipline. That's where you can build that network of people who are actively applying for funding opportunities and working on activities that can be leveraged for funding. Also networking with current grantees and experienced faculty. We have a number of people here who have experience applying and managing extramural funds. So if you ever want to get paired, happy to do that. And we can look into setting up something formal if that's preferred. Okay, so getting engaged with extramural activities is another great way to make sure that you're building that momentum. Not everybody is, the timing doesn't always work out for everyone to become a principal investigator, like right when you're curious, and that's okay. I'd say that engaging in extramural activities is probably the best way to build your portfolio towards something that you really want to do. Again, joining ongoing funded projects like with Title III or other state, local, and private grants is one way to do that. Private and foundation funding opportunities are also available to implement activities. Our campus has a number of private sources, and we may just be able to pick something up if we were to put together a package and say that you wanted to implement a project. Sometimes people find that the impact of their project is like much larger than what the budget really needs to support. Like there's like very high impact practices that people want to do that aren't costing like $100,000. And if there's funds that are readily available to deploy and support what you want to do, it's best that we try to do that without having to go through the formal process, because that takes time and you might want to implement something sooner rather than later. Third is managing foundation accounts and activities. That's to me kind of like what a principal investigator does if you're serving as an account supervisor for a foundation or private account. So let us know. Those are just other creative ways that you can build that managerial sense. So how can we help? Again, I'm here with Stan, Linda, and Martin. That's the grants office team. We work with folks one-on-one for proposal development. We also provide guidance on compliance and reporting requirements. This is especially valuable, I think, as we're facing so many changes in federal government and other areas of compliance. We also provide assistance with budget creation and grant writing, and we support with dissemination and outreach efforts in partnership with Lisa Yamamoto and others who are involved in that process. Now, I know we're here to talk about growth and how we can leverage extramural activities, which are quite complicated and ask a lot of you. I think it would be great to recognize the excellent work that you're doing in these spaces. And the campus wants to know how it can better resource and support what you're doing. And we know that applying for grants is not the easiest thing to do, especially if it's just done in addition to everything that you're doing with your teaching, counseling responsibilities. So we're conducting a survey right now, and this is particularly for people who are not yet a principal investigator or managing extramural activities. If you've already like been seasoned and worked on grants and contracts before, you're welcome to take the survey too. But this is going to gather really helpful information for campus administration to better understand how we can reallocate resources. Now, there's something I learned at HSSI this year. Josh Kaakua co-presented with the grants office on extramural funding, and we're trying to build a community of practice of grant coordinators across campuses. One of the things that came up is performance funding is coming back. And one of the 4 strategic initiatives is around research and innovation. So Kapi Olani will be able to tap into system funds, performance funding to be specific, to support future extramural growth. And I think that's a great way for us to think about how the campus can support you in resourcing these activities. So whether it's professional development, personnel incentives, or something else, this survey is going to be a formal way to gather that information and just make sure that we're hearing from the faculty first. We are actually supporting the survey through a Title III supplemental grant. So we take it really seriously that we want to get everybody involved, not just the people that we're already working with. We've had record numbers, just like UH has for the past couple of years, but we feel like our work is always ongoing. We're always wanting to work with new people, and we like to see new faces. So please take the survey, and if you didn't get a chance to pull this up on the QR code, just get in touch with us. Our email address is kcc-go@hawaii.edu, and you can always reach out to me. We have a couple of sessions planned. I mentioned earlier the non-federal funding mentorship roundtable taking place next Thursday. We also have some community college grant coordinators, virtual meetings. You're all welcome to join this. It's not just for people who work on grant applications. It would actually be really helpful if we have people who are interested in building out grants programs at the community colleges at these sessions. I'm hoping that people can speak to what resources they'd like, what incentives they'd like to see. In all honesty, the survey is something I intend to bring up just so that colleagues from other campuses are aware of it, and they can ask us to borrow our questions and conduct similar surveys. I think the more campuses throughout the CCs that look at faculty incentives and removing those challenges and barriers, the better off we will be. So again, we have 2 sessions scheduled for the community practice. Those are going to be taking place next Wednesday, April 9th, as well as 2 Wednesdays from then, April 23rd. That's everything I have to present today. These are ways you can get in touch with us. If you're on campus and you have free time after you get yourself coffee, we're down the hall from the bookstore in OEO 103B. Our phone number, our extension is 9780, and our email is KCC-GO, which stands for KCC Grants Office at hawaii.edu. Thanks again for having me. Happy to hear your questions, thoughts, and other suggestions.
Go ahead, Mom. Yeah,
Is that in-house support or do we have outside?
Oh, yes. Yes, thank you, Preeta. So your question is whether there is in-house support for implementing extramural activities. Yes, so your question is whether there's support for proposal development and grant writing before it goes to the sponsor. So yes, we have 2 layers of support. The grants office is able to work with you on developing the application. We also review proposals. It really depends on the needs of the principal investigator and the sponsor. So for example, you applied for the NBRE pilot, and that's really something that is driven by your discipline. And none of us are in the hard sciences at the grants office. We're all like social sciences or arts and humanities majors. So in that case, like we can help in terms of like technical review for the proposal. And we also work with the implementation group, who is a consultant firm based in DC. TIG works with all 10 UH campuses. And yes, TIG. So Dr. Kelvin Chu and Eleanor Bowling at the implementation group have been really fantastic. They've worked with us on Saba's application to HRSA, as well as Amanda and Wendy's that went to National Science Foundation. So TIG is incredibly helpful when it comes to sciences, but they also do things that are not in the sciences. So we've worked with them on education proposals.
So there is an R16. Are we qualified as R16?
So your question is if we're eligible to apply for R16. Could you help me understand what R16 means?
R16. So there are R15 and R16. R15 is more towards research and less teaching, but R16 is primarily teaching institutes is the requirement, but there is some kind of student enrollment eligibility criteria which qualifies the institute to apply for that.
Okay.
As far as I know, that was not R16 applications. So when I said HP, nothing so hard to apply everything. So there was any kind of our consortium kind of way, I think, for developing proposals. So they were trained again. I know to do a couple of people also do this. So it's kind of more possibility for those who introduce such activities. But there is a requirement for student enrollment. There's particularly how many students the course. I don't know the details, but there is student enrollment.
Okay, thank you. We'll look into that further. It sounds like the R15 and R16 requirements are specific to National Institutes of Health.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We'll look into that and we will get you an answer. So for the people joining us from online, in case you didn't hear that, Preetha's question is whether our institution has the R15 and R6 or R16 eligibility requirement to pursue certain types of federal grants from the National Institutes of Health. And these are contingent upon various factors, including student enrollment and other measures. So we will look into that. And if you are interested in pursuing NIH grants, just send us a note. That's one of the sponsors that does have a prior requirement in terms of eligibility. So it's always helpful to know those threshold requirements ahead of time. Thank you.
We just need some federal designations.
Okay, thank you very much. So we do have some eligibility requirements that come up before we're able to apply for federal grants. One of them is for the Title III program. This is for Native Hawaiian serving institutions. We have dual designations as ANH, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, as well as ANAPC, which is Asian American, Native American, and Pacific Islander serving institutions. We just submitted our application early. I think it's due next week, Monday, if I know correctly. And we've been successful at getting dual designation after learning the trade secret from Gail Makuakani London from Hilo. So if you know Gail, thank you. She's taught us the secret. We're open for any other questions from people online or in the room. Thanks to Chris for co-hosting.
Taking notes.
Well, while you're thinking of your questions, I do want to say, I personally am not a faculty member, but Kelli did share the different ranks with me, and we review this on a regular basis whenever we're putting together extramural funding budgets. We're aware of like the C2 through C5 ranks and how it's budgeted differently according to the general salary schedule and just the general rhythm of people applying for contract renewal as well as their tenure and promotion. So I think to that, one of the specific things that came up from today's session is really leaning into the different types of leadership that is taking place at the campus, not just saying that an indication of service at professional service at rank C5 or C4 is being a department chair. When you look at how much responsibility there is to managing extramural accounts, a lot of what we're seeing like with campus responsibilities is like analogous to what a principal investigator or a co-investigator or a component lead is doing on extramural programs. So to give you an example, let's say we partner with Chaminade University to apply for a 5-year Title III grant. That's 5 years. Department chair appointment isn't necessarily for 5 years. But if you're the campus lead who's responsible for the accounts funding this partnership, you're going to be managing a subaward. You're going to be working with different accounting systems, not just the KFS system that we use to look at funding. You're going to be working with a different set of project accountants at the Office of Research Services. You're probably going to be managing a number of personnel actions. One of the most complicated things is figuring out how do I pay people, even if it seems like I'm going to give people an honorarium to participate in a summer institute, and let's just say it's $500 for the day. Figuring out all of those personnel issues is really challenging, especially if you're the person that has to initiate that and it isn't your department staff that's handling all of that paperwork. Another faculty colleague who is managing many different types of funds is Aaron Hanai. He has a federal grant, which he's a principal investigator for from NSF, the Advanced Technological Education grant. This is in partnership with a national nonprofit, the Institute for Future Intelligence. He also has a private and foundation grant from Hawaiian Electric Charitable Industries. And he applied for more NSF funding from different funding agencies. So anyway, the reason I bring that up is one of the things Aaron has to do is he has to figure out how to disperse stipends to DOE teachers, faculty participants, students, and board members. So those are really, really complicated things that I'm not so sure that there's a campus equivalent to that. So if you need examples of responsibilities that PIs or co-PIs do on extramural activities, the grants office is happy to provide you with information. And perhaps one of the things that can come out of this is a comparison chart with the faculty ranks and the types of analogous activities that are done with grants. We're still open for questions. I'm sure the My Grant and grants.gov portion of the presentation got everybody so excited on a Friday, but if you do want to sign up for those systems and you don't have access yet, we're more than happy to walk you through those systems. Okay, well, while we are waiting for people to ask questions, I will say that the Title III project directors had a meeting with our program director at the U.S. Department of Education last week during the NHEA convention. I will say unofficially that we won't assume that all federal grants have stopped, even at the Department of Education. So one of the things I will say as a piece of advice is the turnaround time for applying for grants is always really tight. It's either 30, 45, or 60 days. And by the time you find out that something was released, it's not always the same day. Washington, D.C. is ahead. So the advantage is that we have a little more time because our local time is later to work on things. But that also means that if you have questions, it's hard to ask Washington for those things. Obviously, if you're applying for something local or based on the West Coast, then you have a little more wiggle room there. State agencies are also open to partnering with us, but it's usually through 12-month contracts. There's a lot of lead time working with attorneys at the university as well as attorneys at the Attorney General's office. Those are things to keep in mind should you pursue working with state agencies. And when it comes to private and foundation sponsors, they'll usually ask for letters of intent. That's usually a one-pager of what you're going to do with a really general sketch of what you're budgeting. So one of the best things that you can do if you're just considering applying for something is just saying, I'm going to ask the UH Foundation to help me get funds for my idea. And if you're lucky, they'll say, we have just the fund for you, and you don't have to apply for something new. But if you do have to apply for something new, then we can work with you and Asia to develop a one-pager stating your goals, your objectives, and dissemination plan, as well as the funding needs.
We're playing presentation roundtable here, just switching off musical chairs. I just kind of wanted to give kind of a brief kind of description or explanation of how I actually got involved in grants and how I consider Brandon actually a very close friend as well as colleague. So many years ago, when I was actually a lecturer, I believe, I was looking for extramural funding for editing purposes for my then manuscript. And then I went to this brilliant colleague that many of us still remember even today. She's still around, Susan Battery-Noy, who said, you have to meet this particular gentleman here. This is Brandon Marquiga. So this is how we kind of got involved in grants. And I share this story to kind of highlight the fact that grants can serve multiple purposes. It can serve institutional needs. So for example, what Aaron is doing. It can serve personal interests, like for example, what I was looking for an editing stipend to pay someone else to actually edit my manuscript. It can also, of course, serve for material needs that you might need in your classroom or a need that you see with your students. So I want to kind of highlight that you don't even have to get started on that high level federal grant. I wanted to kind of introduce some of the grants that I got involved with. One of the first grants that I actually applied for was the Ideas Grant, which is now known, or then was known as a SEED grant, which is through the University of Hawaii system. And you'll see these regular announcements that do actually come in to everyone's email, asking if you have a program, if you have an interesting project that you want to get involved or at least initiate, this is what this funding is for. And it's for a relatively small amount. It is going to be, within a few $1,000s at most, but it really does help promote innovative programming. The other grant that I really do encourage people to also kind of look at is the Women's Campus Club grant. So if you have material needs or interests, so for example, we were many, many years ago looking to purchase clickers in the classroom to make our classroom activities a little bit more interactive. We didn't want our students to be required to purchase this technology. So instead, we had a set that would be essentially passed on between various classrooms to help make our teaching more interactive and innovative. I also want to highlight another grant that's also a very kind of low stakes grant. It is probably the easiest paperwork we will have to ever do because there actually really is no paperwork. So I'm talking about the Awesome Foundation Grant, where literally in each state or many states, they have a group of donors that they get together, and each of them, usually about 10 to 20 of them, donate $100 every month. If your application is chosen, it's usually under 2 pages. You get literally someone coming to campus and giving you 10 $100 bills. And that was the best feeling ever. And we actually utilized that to purchase the dispensers for women's products in our various restrooms. We've also used the Awesome Grant to fund a garden and gardening supplies down at Olani. So I don't want to, freak everyone out by saying, you have to apply for these high-level grants. I encourage you folks to do these kind of low-level grants, get your feet wet, see what you like, see what you are interested in, and it could serve multiple needs. So I was very kind of happy to see that there's grants for $200 and there's grants that last for a number of years that also extend for essentially a duration and involve different institutions that can involve millions of dollars. The other point that I also wanted to kind of highlight is the fact that you can get involved in grants at every single stage. And I was in fact able to get promoted to C5 even a year early, and I credit that to my involvement with grants. So what I've been doing is sending out those classification requirements, particularly for C4 and C5. The administration is looking for leadership. And I do kind of want to highlight to everyone that the chancellor will be speaking to us next week, and she has actively promoted this particular workshop as a mechanism to have leadership opportunities that do not involve people serving as department chair or head of curriculum, God bless those people, or even, of course, faculty senate, again, awesome people who do that. But if that is not your interests, if that does not serve your personality, your particular focus of you as a professional, I encourage you to look at grants as an alternative opportunity. The other kind of grants that I've also been involved in, which also kind of built upon that, was the National Endowment of Humanities, the Mellon Foundation, the American Council for Learned Societies, as well as the American Historical Association. So I bring them up as particular examples within the humanities, because we often hear about science and math and, career prep, very specific disciplines being chosen for particular grants. But I do welcome my humanities people and our social sciences here to think broadly about some of your interests, your needs, your students, and what you might be able to provide. So on that bright note, we have about 10 minutes left. Do we have any questions that any of us can address or answer or attempt to?
I have a question, Kelly.
What's up, Chrissy?
Hi. I just had a question regarding eligibility for the students and who can apply for these grants, right? Are we able to select specific students? Like I know Sava, she did the nursing major. specified students, but do they have smaller, like you said, low-level grants for like specified majors? Does that make sense?
For the students themselves to apply, or you to apply and designate certain individuals?
Yes, for ourselves for me to apply and designate certain.
I'm going to share the camera with Brandon here.
Thank you.
Hey, Christy, thanks for your question. Are there any particular majors you're thinking about in terms of scholarships?
Nursing
Nursing.
major students.
Okay, that's great. I mean, beyond the specific federal grant that Sabo applied for, I'd say expand it and look at private and foundation sources. That might actually be a reliable source of scholarship funding.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Some federal programs will not allow direct aid to students, like Title III. Title III will support the institution itself, but not necessarily provide scholarships to students. So just bear in mind that sometimes there are limitations on what specifically can or cannot fund scholarships if it's a federal source.
So I just also wanted to add on to what Brandon said. I don't think there's also a requirement to designate specific students for certain grants. So for example, Brandon and I were able to successfully apply for having written a grant for the State Department for study abroad. And that allowed us to kind of creatively think about how we can expand this idea of study abroad to our community college students who necessarily aren't the more typical or common or usual study abroad individuals because of their workload, because they're non-traditional, and all of these different factors. So what I was able to do is to use some of the money from the grant to support 2 summers of a tuition-free class. So that is how I was able to kind of get direct aid to the students by giving them a free 3-credit class over the summer. That was 0 textbook cost. It was OER. It fulfilled all these multiple graduation designations and allowed them to learn about different cultures that would potentially get them interested in study abroad and essentially for sharing study abroad resources. So, Chrissy, these are some great questions of how you can involve students. And I kind of did this kind of in a very indirect way without ever designating a particular student, but I said I wanted to offer a free class, which I was able to do, and which benefited over 30 students. So I hope
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Were there requirements or other obligations of the students?
They were just to kind of attend class to make sure that they were successful. And I did actually bring in fantastic speakers for study abroad, including, of course, Brandon, who also, his other cap is essentially international education. It was just for them to kind of just be exposed to that. So it wasn't a very specific outcome that the students had to fulfill, like paperwork, or they had to study abroad, or they were required to do this particular aspect of study abroad. But it was just that they could just attend and learn more about it and plant that seed to learn about different cultures. And what we actually did the previous summer was bring in officials from the Okinawan prefectural government office from Washington, D.C. to come to them. So even if they couldn't travel, we brought officials to them. It was kind of this very unique experience that I think benefited everyone. So if we cannot bring study abroad to them, we brought essentially the international experts to our students in their classes. So just kind of thinking creatively of how you can apply even something as obscure as study abroad, how can that benefit our particular students in, for example, in ethnic studies or social sciences class?
Thank you.
Great questions.
Thank you, Christy.
Other questions that we can ask or online? Well,
sorry, I have another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. As part of record keeping or data keeping, or submitting reports after the grant or during the grant, is that written into certain grants, or is that required for UH, or like
most sponsors will specify what the requirements are, the reporting requirements are in the solicitation. So the larger grants will require that you work with an external evaluator. And that's something that we can work with Sean at the Office for Institution Effectiveness on exploring. So if there is an evaluation requirement that you're uncertain about, then we can always consult folks at OFI to see how they've approached it and what resources might be available at UH versus what we might have to contract out.
But I've personally had no problems with reporting. The grants office makes that such a smooth and easy process as possible. It doesn't necessarily add so much to your workload that you're trying to, extrapolate the data, put in the report, make sure it's submitted correctly. I've had nothing but positive experiences with, submitting these midterm reports or final reports throughout the duration of the grant. It hadn't really impacted my workload any much more than an additional interest that I might have had.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Well, Brandon has also, as I put into the chat earlier, generously volunteered to share his slides that I'll be sending out to you folks also. Right after this presentation, of course, is recorded, and will be also disseminated to all of us here. Finally, of course, if you are looking just to get involved even peripherally with grants, I also sent out right before this presentation the Manao workshop. You can both attend as well as be a presenter. Both involve, at least the participants will get a stipend. And you can kind of just get involved in grants in that particular way by being essentially a participant in essentially this agreement or workshop that we have with Chaminade University. And that's how, in fact, I got involved. I've been to their wonderful Aloha A institutes, and this is how you start to meet the right people. You start essentially familiarizing yourself with this entire process. But again, I do want to emphasize this point that our chancellor is aware and in support of this particular workshop as an avenue for valid professional development and leadership for both contract renewal as well as tenure promotion. And with our last 3 minutes left, any other questions or concerns that we can address? Or any last words that you would like to share?
Well, thank you. This is a great opportunity to synergize our efforts and think about how to thoughtfully and methodically integrate extramural leadership into the contract renewal, tenure, and promotion processes. So let's keep the discussion going. If you do have specific suggestions, always reach out to the grants office. The survey is, of course, another way to get a snapshot of how people are feeling right now, especially from folks who haven't participated yet. Even if you don't have any strong opinions on it, it's still good to hear from you. We will also be trying to follow up with the UH Institutional Research Assessment and Planning Office, IRAPO. We're hoping to do focus groups as well, following up with faculty, hoping the timing will work out and we'll be able to catch people before its finals. So please stay tuned for that. And of course, we'd love to have you at a future grantsmanship session. Again, we're meeting with the community college grant coordinators and community of practice next Wednesday virtually. And then we're going to have our in-person event at Lama 207A next Thursday at noon to 1 o'clock. So just come by. It's informal. We just like to chat with you and get to know what you're doing.
And how can they get involved as part of your newsletter? Should they just send it to you, email?
Oh, yes. If you want to get signed up for a newsletter, just get in touch with either the team or me. Our team email address is kcc-go@gmail.com, which I'll put in the chat, or you're always welcome to send me a note.
Well, we are so effective that we are finishing actually 1 minute early. So we will stay behind in person and also online if you have any questions, but if not, we're going to be ending the recording right here. And thank you again, everyone, for participating and attending and asking these great questions. And again, this is just another avenue for leadership. And I am proof positive that you do not have to serve in particular capacities to get fully promoted. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good weekend.